All right, big weekend on tap for Pitt is obviously the football Panthers will move toward this game at Louisville on Saturday. That's a huge one for the football team to see if they can bounce back, end their 3-game losing streak, get a win on the road, and set themselves up to still reach that 9-win target, which I still think is very much in play. I mean, that thing is going to be in play up until, the point if or when they lose 2 more games, right? If they win one of these 2 final regular season games, they'll have an opportunity to get to 9 wins in a bowl. And so first opportunity is this weekend to go to Louisville, and that's a big game. We've been talking about it already. We're going to talk about it again tomorrow, but a little basketball talk today. We didn't get a chance to talk after the VMI game on Monday night. We touched on a little bit of basketball on Monday morning, just kind of recapping the West Virginia game, but we weren't going to tape a new Morning Pitt after the VMI. There'll probably be games where we tape a Morning Pitt the night of a game. We stay up late and do that. We weren't going to do that after VMI, so I figured we could talk about it here on Wednesday to get ready, not just to recap that game, but also get ready for the next game in the Greenbrier tip-off, which is the real game in the Greenbrier tip-off when Pitt takes on LSU on Friday afternoon, like 2:30 in the afternoon. It's interesting start time there. They're the first game of 2. UCF and Wisconsin play in the afternoon, and then the winners of the 2 games will face each other on Sunday. The losers of the 2 games will face each other on Sunday. But this is really an opportunity here. Whoever Pitt plays, we know they're playing LSU, and then they'll play UCF or Wisconsin. Whoever they face out of that other game, I mean, they're going to get 2 games against top 60 opponents in Ken Palm's rankings, or ratings, as it were, which will be the highest rated opponents they've faced so far this season. And so we really are coming up to that first big test for the Pitt basketball team. Friday night against West Virginia was quite a test, taking on a power conference opponent for the first time. Panthers passed that with flying colors, pretty much drubbing West Virginia by 20 and doing everything better and winning that game. But now they're going to get an even tougher challenge. 2 of them this weekend with LSU and then either UCF or Wisconsin. So where does this team stand right now? What's notable about this team? Where have they been good? Where do they need to improve? What could be the strengths that'll help them get 2 wins in this Greenbrier tip-off? And what could be the weaknesses that could sink them on one or both days in that ballroom in a hotel that they're going to be playing in? Literally, it's a ballroom. It's not it's a basketball court that they're putting in a hotel ballroom. I heard someone say, how many people do you think they're expecting there? How many fans? It's like you can only fit like 500 people. It's a ballroom. That's all it is. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they frame it on TV to see if they make it look like something other than a ballroom at an expensive resort. But look, when you are charging what they're charging to go to this thing and stay in the hotel and everything, you don't need a ton of people there. You can have them play basketball in a ballroom, and that's what it's going to be. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch on Friday afternoon. But more interesting will be how Pitt does against LSU. This is a huge game, a huge test. This whole weekend will be a huge test for Pitt. So where do the Panthers stand right now? What are they doing well? What do they need to get better? What do we like? What do we not like? And any surprises so far? Maybe 1 or 2. Let's talk about it here on the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yes, Wednesday, it's the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com, hanging out with you, talking a little Pitt hoops here to get your day started. We're in that overlap season where there's football and basketball to talk about, not to mention volleyball and soccer. I mean, there's a lot going on in the world of Pitt sports. We just mostly pick like one topic to hit on each day. Monday, I think we did a little basketball and some football. Yesterday, we were all football. Today, we're going to be all basketball. Tomorrow will probably be back to football. Friday we'll have our mailbag. We'll be all over the place here for the next couple of weeks while football, and even after the football season ends, there's going to be more football stuff to talk about with recruiting and the transfer portal and everything like that. And obviously we'll have a lot of basketball topics to discuss too. I like it. I like this time of year when there's a lot going on. It's fun when everybody's playing games. I think we've talked about this before. So enjoyable time of year, gives us plenty to talk about. And today we'll talk a little Pitt hoops. Pitt destroyed VMI on Friday night. Why am I messing up my days? Monday night. They destroyed VMI Monday night. They blew them out by 45 points. And it didn't always look like it was going to be like that. It didn't always look like it was going to be that way. Pitt was up like 19-6. Looked like they were well on their way to a blowout, if not necessarily a high-scoring game. And then all of a sudden, VMI goes on a little run, a 12-2 run or something like that. And All of a sudden, it was 21-18. All of a sudden, Pitt's lead had shrunk to 3 points, and Jeff Capel called a timeout. I mean, you know how it went after there. Jeff Capel called a timeout. They went on a big run to end the first half and then almost doubled up VMI in the second half. Scored 54 points. VMI only scored 28 in the second half. Pitt made, I think, 17 out of their final 19 shots from the field, 7 of 8 from three in the final, whatever it was, 12 minutes or something like that. 7 of their final, like they just couldn't miss. They turned it up. And came out with a blowout win. And there were a lot of individual performances to talk about there, not the least of which being Jalen Lowe putting up a triple-double for the 6th time in school history. It's pretty remarkable, and I'm sure we talked about this last year as well, but it's pretty remarkable that there have been 6 triple-doubles in Pitt history. 2 of them have been in the last 2 years. One was Bub Carrington last year, of course, and then Jalen Lowe getting one on Monday night with 11 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists. We'll talk about Lowe in a minute because there's a lot to talk about with him. Not just the fact that he made history with the triple-double, but that there's just a lot to talk about with how he has played through 5 games so far. But maybe the most interesting thing to me about the VMI game, and I almost wonder if Jeff Capel, actually I don't wonder, I'm almost positive Jeff Capel did this on purpose to schedule this VMI game where he scheduled it. Because if you think of this VMI game being sandwiched between West Virginia on one side and this Greenbrier tip-off on the other, and granted, Monday night's game was part of the Greenbrier tip-off, but the real games start this weekend when they go to White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, and take on LSU and whoever they play on Sunday. That's when the real thing is. And so sandwiched in between this huge backyard brawl rivalry where the building's going to be packed and it's going to be intense and there's going to be a lot of energy and everybody's going to be fired up and it's a Friday night and the zoo is all over the place. Students, set a new zoo record and all this. Like, you got that on one side, and then you got this first time they're playing away from home, playing the best competition they faced all year in this tournament setting, which is a different kind of vibe on the other side. And then right in between, you've got this game against VMI on a Monday night. Nobody's there. They announced the attendance at 6,000. Like, I could have counted the number of people who were there. There weren't 6,000 people. 6,000 would imply that the building was half full. The building was not half full. There were some sections that might have been half full. The building was not half full. There weren't 6,000 people there. There were far less. I jokingly said there were 600. It was probably more like a couple thousand. But it was a mostly empty building against a considerably overmatched opponent. And again, sandwiched in between these two games that Pitt would certainly be more up for. The intensity, the energy, and the emotion of the West Virginia game, the intensity, energy, and uniqueness of this road trip to down into West Virginia. And then in between, you got this little old game against VMI in front of nobody on a Monday night. Ho-hum. And just conveniently, and this worked out well, maybe Capel realized it or not, VMI plays a sort of aggressive style, an attacking style. They play a zone defense, but it's not a passive zone. It's very active and really kind of brought the fight to. They made it difficult. You couldn't just pass around the perimeter. And I think we've watched Pitt play against like Syracuse's zone over the years. You could pass around the perimeter, see what you could find, and every now and then somebody would think they had an opening to try and dribble, and they couldn't. And so you would just sort of cut and try and get to the free throw line and make jump shots from there. But VMI was very much not like that. VMI got after Pitt and attacked, and they were aggressive and had energy and really kind of pushed the tempo. After made baskets, and they didn't make many of them, maybe only about 15, but after made baskets, they were pressing, bringing full court pressure. Again, taking the fight to Pitt. And even offensively, they didn't make many shots, but they were attacking. They were aggressive. They were active. They had energy and up tempo. And Pitt, particularly in that stretch when VMI made a run and cut the lead to 3, Pitt didn't seem to really have a match for that energy. Jeff Capel likes to talk about playing with force, and he said it after the game on Monday night that they weren't playing with force. And so I think it was a really interesting game and an interesting matchup and an interesting challenge because it was sandwiched between these two highly charged events and against a team that you needed to have some energy to play against VMI. Now, Pitt could have probably skated by and just beat VMI by only 17 or something like that. And they didn't really need to turn up the intensity all that much or play all that hard. And they probably could have been fine. But instead, they responded. And after Capel called a timeout, again, it was 21-18. The final score was, like 93-48 or something? So what's the math on that? 93 minus 21 is 72. And VMI had 18. They ended up with 48. So they outscored them 72-30 after VMI cut that lead. More than doubled them up. And it was really, really impressive to see. And I think it said a lot about this team. I mean, it's sort of a sports cliche to say, well, you got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And the teams you're supposed to beat, you should blow them out if you can and all this stuff. And like, yeah, that's true. And I agree. And I would say that myself. And I think that's been relevant with the Radford game, the Gardner-Webb game, Murray State to some extent. Although Murray State was better than those teams, probably the second best team Pitt has faced this season, soon to be third and then even fourth. But still, they were able to take care of business. But VMI is probably the worst team they've played all season. Maybe not probably. And they took it to them. And again, it's not just that you were facing an inferior opponent, but you were facing an inferior opponent that plays in a certain kind of way that might not always be easy to blow them out. I mean, you really have to work to blow them out. It's not hard, but you have to put in the effort. You have to put in the energy. And that's what they were able to do, in addition to sort of playing with patience against the zone. I think that was another upside of that game on Monday night, is that they faced a zone defense, which has given them trouble on a couple occasions this season. I think Gardner-Webb kind of gave them a little bit of trouble with the zone. And as such, that it was a little bit surprising that West Virginia didn't try to use more itself. But VMI came out. That's their regular defense is playing a zone defense, and so it was a good challenge for Pitt to go against that. It was a good matchup for Pitt to experience and try to get more live on court time against the zone defense and against a team that plays zone like that one does. And so all in all, you look at it and say, wow, they blew a team out by 45. That didn't really help their net ranking or anything like that, although I don't think there's any net rankings yet. They did move up in KenPom a couple spots, I think from 20 to 16 or something like that. So you're not going to hang a banner about beating VMI by 45, but I do think you can take it as an encouraging sign that in a situation where you might not always be able to produce the most. I mean, I was drifting a little. I was not drifting like falling asleep, but I mean, like, that game was getting a little sleepy. I think most people would probably. I actually during the game, not during the game, but during like some timeouts and stuff, did some research on VMI basketball. Found out some interesting things. VMI, the Citadel, big time rivals. Did you not? Originally, VMI's biggest rival was Virginia Tech, who our good friend Jerry DiPaolo affectionately refers to by its full name of VPI. So VMI's biggest rival was VPI, but then once Virginia Tech became like a serious school about its sports and VMI continued to be VMI, the biggest rival became the Citadel. Incidentally, VMI and the Citadel are the only two Division I schools that don't have women's basketball. I'll make this quick. VMI's turnaround in basketball was engineered by Coach Duggar Bokum or something like that, who turned the program around, led them to a lot of success, and then left. And I would like to actually read more about this, to go to the Citadel. This happened in the 2000s, that he left VMI to go to the Citadel. I have to imagine this was a major controversy and a major hit for VMI to lose their coach to the Citadel. I only bring this up, and it's only even mildly somewhat connected and relevant, because that guy was the coach of the Citadel when they played at the Peterson Event Center and beat Pitt a couple years ago. But it was that kind of game. And so for Pitt to come out with the energy they needed to win that game, I think says a lot. Obviously, the big storyline player-wise was Jalen Lowe getting his triple-double of 11, 10, and 10. It was pretty great when he came back in. About 3 minutes left to play in the game. I don't think the VMI coach took it personally that Jeff Capel put Jalen Lowe back in the game to get the triple-double. He didn't even realize Jalen Lowe got a triple-double. That coach was a little bit weird, but seemed like a nice enough guy. So Jalen Lowe comes back in with about 3 minutes left to go, and I think he had 11, 8, and 7 when he came back in. got a rebound, came back down to the other end, dished to Jorge Diaz-Graham for a three. They made it. Possession or two later, dishes to Jorge Diaz-Graham for a three. He makes it down at the other end. VMI airballs a three. Jalen Lowe grabs it. Now, I guess that counts as a rebound. We had some debate about it in the press area before it went up on the official thing. But then right at the other end of the court, dishes to Jorge Diaz-Graham, drains it. And if there was a second biggest player story in this game, I mean, like, by a distant margin, because the triple-double is going to take a lot of the headlines. But if there was a second biggest player story in this game, it was Jorge Diaz-Graham coming off the bench and going 4 for 4 from the field, all 4 being three-point shots. Now, Jorge Diaz-Graham has not been playing much or playing well this season. I've almost sort of forgotten it because it's been so long since he's played, because he had that injury. Injuries, I guess, that sidelined him. It's been a long time since we've seen him, and I sort of lost track of who he was. He's been in every game, but he hasn't done a whole lot. And I've sort of lost track of how good he could potentially be. His shot definitely looked sweet on Monday night. I remember I asked him after the game, I was like, Jorge, your final 3 threes were the 3 assists that Jalen needed to get that triple-double. Did you know, like, hey, this is what's at stake here. I got to make these shots so he can get this. And he said, no, I wasn't thinking that. He's like, I just, I was just thinking I have to make the shots. That's what I do. And when he said that, Jalen Lowe hit it with a fax, which I appreciate. I appreciate that little camaraderie there. You'll have to check out the video. Jorge's confidence and Jalen sort of backing it up of like, he wasn't saying this, but it sort of came across like, you guys out there think this guy's not any good. Jalen Lowe saying it to everyone out there, media, fans, whoever. You guys don't think Jorge's good, but we know he can drain shots. And his shots looked pretty sweet on Monday night. I don't know what Jorge's role is going to be. I mean, this is kind of one of the big questions of how this lineup is going to shake out. West Virginia game, for the first 28 minutes or so, Jeff Capel really only used 7 guys. The 5 starters, Lowe and Ishmael Leggett and Damian Dunn, Guillermo Diaz-Graham and Cam Corrin, plus the 6th man, Zach Austin, and then Brandon Cummings is number 7, that extra guard, for minimal minutes. And it was really about 28 minutes before Jeff Capel went into his bench and brought in, I think it was Jorge at that point, who came in. Now, the VMI game, the bench was a little bit looser. Those 7 plus Amsel Delilich got on the court. The top 7 plus Delilich got on the court in the first half. Jorge made his appearance in the second half. Papa Amadou Kanti came in, and Amdi Najai came in, and Marlon Barnes was in it. There were like 11 or 12 guys who played in that game. 10 guys scored. 6 out of the 10 scored in double figures. You really got to everybody on the court, which should happen when you're beating a team by 45. What's going to be interesting to see going forward is whether this team ends up being 7 deep, 8 deep, or 9 deep when they get into the real games, like this Friday. And I don't think this is going to be the final verdict on the rotation and lineup because, again, Jorge coming back from injury. Amsel Delilich missed a month due to an injury right before the season started. So you're still playing it by ear, I think, with those 2 guys and figuring out what they can do. But you've got your top 6, right? The starters plus Austin. And then you have Cummings, which is probably your top 7 right now. The question is how much Delilich and Jorge can give you to make it a top 8 or a top 9. And how well they can play, how much you can trust them on the court to see whether you go 8 deep or 9 deep with regularity. That's what I think is going to be interesting to watch develop this weekend, but even beyond this weekend, because it's going to be, I think, a work in progress and a developing story. And I think, Delilich he ended up actually playing a lot of minutes against VMI because I think he played 19 minutes in the second half. No, he didn't play 19 minutes in the second half. He played 15 minutes total against VMI. And that I think is going to grow, but he's not going to get those kind of minutes against LSU probably, unless it ends up being like a blowout. But over time, I think Delilich is going to work his way into earning more minutes. I think Jorge could as well. And we're talking about sort of situations absent of fouls. Obviously, fouls are going to cause some things to get mixed up. If a guard or 2 gets into foul trouble, Brandon Cummings is going to see his minutes go up. If Cam Corrin gets into foul trouble, Guillermo's going to play there more at the center spot. And Zach Austin and probably Delilich will see minutes come up. The fouls will always affect what the minute counts look like. But if we're talking about sort of a pure unfoul dependent situation, I'm curious to see how it evolves. And it might be one of the biggest storylines to watch as over the next few weeks and the next month or so heading toward ACC play is how the minutes evolve and how the rotation evolves. You've got 6, you've got 7. I think Brandon Cummings, who is probably further along than a lot of people expected him to be as a freshman, is in there as that rotation as the the fourth guard. It's really a question of what Delilich and Jorge can do and what they can give you. And again, the VMI game, Jorge didn't play in the first half. So, and actually didn't, neither one of them, Jorge or Delilich, played in the first half against West Virginia. So it's going to be up to them to sort of earn their way into those minutes. Like Capel said, he doesn't give BS minutes. That's what he said a week or two ago. I don't know when it was. He doesn't give BS minutes. You have to earn those minutes. And so it's going to be interesting to watch and see what Delilich and Jorge can earn in that regard. So it's going to be a big one on Friday. Can't wait. Really looking forward to it. We'll talk more about that tonight on the live Panther-Lair show. Don't forget, we'll be live at 8:30 p.m. tonight right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you tune in. Join me and Jim Hammett for a little Pitt sports conversation. We'll talk Pitt football, basketball, and anything else you want to talk about with your comments and questions. I look forward to it as always. So like this video and subscribe. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You won't miss any of our Pitt video content if you do. And check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, to get all the Pitt sports news you can possibly handle. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you've had a great week so far. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt. Oh, and also the live stream tonight right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.